Hello and welcome back to this guide to the Alamy-Lightroom Bridge. Well, praise be to Alamy, those 5 images I posted yesterday have passed QC and they're now, as you can see, listed in Alamy, but they're not on sale, which is what you'd expect because they don't have captions, keywords, license, all of that kind of stuff. So what I'm going to do today is run through the fetch operation. Now, this is the most complicated bit of the whole process because there is only a very tenuous link between Lightroom and Alamy as it stands right now. The fetch is designed to make that link an awful lot stronger. This is why sometimes when you fetch for the first time, it can take 1 or 2 tries to get it right. The plugin does try its damnedest to get it right the first time, but depending on circumstances, and particularly for photos that you may have had on Alamy for some time, it can take a little help. And what I'd like to do today is primarily just run through the process, but also cover some of the details. There will be a separate video on the full details of matching, so if you are having trouble getting things matched up correctly and it's happening more than once or twice, then please go check out that video because it may well answer some of your questions. So what I'm going to do first is select these 5 photos, and just to prove that things are coming back, I'm going to go in and set some of the details here. So there's no people, there's no sensitive private property, and I'm going to set the primary category to be travel, and I'm going to deliberately leave the rest of them blank. So we save those. And now I'm going to come back into Lightroom. So the only thing that's happened here is that during the upload yesterday, these 5 photos were put into this static collection. This is one of the options during the upload process, that when you upload something to Alamy, it can store that in a static collection. Now, if you haven't used collections before, the difference between the 2 types that Lightroom provides, the static and dynamic, is that static collection is basically, I want you to include these very specific photos. That means that over time, the contents of that collection never change unless you, of course, delete the photo. Dynamic collections, on the other hand, work on queries. They go into Lightroom and they basically run a filter in real time. So a dynamic collection would be based on, for example, I want you to show me all photos under a given folder with a certain file type, with 3 stars, with a caption, with an Alamy media reference. And you can make those as simple or as complicated as you like. What that means, though, is that the contents of a dynamic collection changes over time. So just because we're doing this as a historical record, if you like, which photos were sent in which batches, these are added to a static collection. You can choose not to. So what I'm going to do is select those, and I'm going to go back to the export, and I'm going to do the full export here simply because I want to show exactly what happens there. You can, of course, use the export with previous and things like that as well. So we have the presets down the side here, so I'm going to select that. And then we simply come down into the download settings immediately. Now, normally what you're going to want here is overwrite everything. So overwrite IPTC data, overwrite Alamy data, and show log on completion whether you choose to or not. I'm going to switch that off for this time. IPTC data are the things like captions, comments, industry standard bits of information that can be added to an image. And if we scroll down on the right here, which I of course can't do because that dialog's open, you can see at the bottom we're just beginning to get IPTC metadata with date created, sublocation, city, that kind of thing. So if you want to fetch that data from Alamy, then you set that checkbox on. This checkbox works in exactly the same way, except that it's the Alamy specific data. Those are things like the license, status, categories, is it Alamy exclusive, that kind of thing. That's data that Alamy defined for themselves, and that is also the same data that you can't send to Alamy as part of the image submission, simply because there's no space in a standard JPEG file to send that. So again, normally you would want that set. I'll do this one next. tags are what Alamy call keywords, and your options there are to replace, to merge, or to ignore. So what I'm going to do there is I'm going to say merge, which is probably the most useful under most circumstances. These do pretty much what they say. If you say replace tags, then the keywords that you get after the fetch should match identically the ones that are set in the Alamy Image Manager online. In other words, if you have keywords set in Lightroom which are not set to Alamy, then they will be removed from your photo in Lightroom. Merge simply combines the two sets. It takes all of the keywords that you currently have in Lightroom and all of the keywords that you currently have set in the Alamy Image Manager online, and you end up with all of them. And that's probably the safest option. Keywording is another area which is far more complicated than it might seem, and I may well do another video exclusively on keywording. This is also related to the keywording, and what that's doing is handling an Alamy specific modification. Alamy have two different classes of keywords. They have tags and they have super tags. Now they work exactly the same way, they're just words or groups of words, but they place more emphasis on super tags in their search. So in other words, if you want something to be an important part of your searching, then you set that as a super tag. Because Alamy has these two different classes and everywhere else seems to just have the one, it's simply a keyword or it isn't, the plugin stores the Alamy tags separately to Lightroom's keywords. So what this checkbox is saying is that you can pull the tag and super tag information back from Alamy into the tag and super tags fields in Lightroom, which are added by the plugin, but then not push them back into the Lightroom keyword hierarchy. Normally I would leave that on, but it depends on how you handle keywords, so choose that as you will. Now the final control in here is the fetch data for, and it currently says all images. This is probably the most important setting in here. We have options of all and not ready, on sale and selected. So all is obvious, that goes to Alamy and it fetches the information about every single photo that you have there. That can take some time to do, of course, depending on how many photos you have. Not ready, on sale and selected match exactly with the Alamy status. So normally for newly uploaded images, not ready is the most obvious one to use. What I'm going to do this time is use selected because that is kind of a special case. Just covering the last three briefly, these simply run the same as the all match, but they stop after a certain number. So if you do have a very large number of photos at Alamy, you can restrict it somewhat, and the results come back from Alamy in reverse date order. So in other words, this is the first 100 in the list, it's the most recent 100 photos that you've uploaded, that's the most recent 500 photos that you've uploaded, etc. Now, I said that the selected mode was slightly different. The reason for that is how Alamy identify their photos. As you probably know, each photo that you upload to them gets a unique Alamy reference. It's a 5 or 6 digit code. The problem is that when you upload an image, whether it's by FTP or by the online web upload, from within the plugin or from Alamy's own website, there is no way of getting that Alamy reference back. The Alamy reference is assigned after they've received them, after they've processed them. This means that the plugin has absolutely no way of telling what that Alamy reference is until after you've matched them for the first time. The one and only way that they can be matched up with the images in the Alamy system is by their file name. Alamy store that as your ref, your reference. Now this causes a certain amount of trouble because it's not uncommon to have more than one photo with the same file name. If you're simply leaving them on the file names that the camera assigns, then you may well very quickly end up with a number of different photos called _mg_ and number. So it's quite important to have unique file names, so I would strongly recommend, if you're using this plugin, always assign some kind of custom file name. You can make that easier, certainly if you're using more than one camera body, by assigning custom names within the body. But it still makes good sense to individually rename the image files. Now that can be done fully automatically inside Lightroom so that you don't have to sit and rename thousands and thousands of photos one by one. You can just set it to rename the contents of an entire folder or your entire hard disk if you're feeling brave, using a pattern with a number at the end of it that will not wrap round. So to come back to the file name, when the plugin tries to match the photo in Lightroom with the photo in Alamy for the first time, the one thing it has to hand is the file name. And even that has an additional complication because Lightroom also supports the concept of a copy name. Now those are most useful for virtual copies, but they can be set on original photos as well. You don't have to just set those on virtual copies. And even when they are set on virtual copies, they tend to be just left as the default, which is copy 1, copy 2, copy 3, etc. However, if you're exporting from Lightroom using the normal file exporters, or if you've exported in the past, or even if you've exported with this plugin until fairly recently, then the file name that you ended up with on disk is simply going to be the original image's file name, not including the copy name. So even then, you can still end up with multiple photos in Alamy with the same your reference. This becomes painfully relevant in selected mode. And the reason it becomes painful in selected mode is because the only thing you have to go on at the moment is the file name. And when you search by that file name in Alamy, you may get a result, you may get no results if the name has been changed, if you've renamed the photo since it was sent to them, for example, or you may get more than one result for several different photos. This makes life tricky. So let's finally run that export just now. I know it's called an export, you're actually importing things, that's just what Lightroom calls that procedure. So there we go, 5 images processed, 5 updated. I'm going to say OK there. That will be off getting the sales data now because that checkbox was on. And you can see in the right hand panel here, I've set it to Alamy Plus, which is one of 2 settings that's added by the plugin. And you can see that there's a lot more information here now. The Alamy media reference was already set, but we now have the Alamy reference. We also have the specific URL for this photo, and if I click on there, then you can see you're taken straight to the Alamy sale page for that photo. Let me minimize that again. Status is not ready, it didn't fail QC, thankfully, so that's empty. Royalty-free license is set on upload, and you can only deliberately set that within Alamy now, because once the license is set, you're not allowed to change it. And unfortunately within Lightroom I can't set a control to say only allow updates here if it's empty. So the only place you can change a license by design is on the Alamy website. However, the other things have been downloaded. I only have one pseudonym set up, so that is correct, but you can see here we have the primary category is travel. That's what I set on the Alamy website. Secondary is empty, I left that one empty. And the discoverability there corresponds to the Alamy's discoverability score and status. So if I just scroll down a little here, you can see the IPTC metadata. That's all there. And you can see the tags. Those are the ones that were set on the Alamy website, Chile, Easter Island and South America. And this is using the old style annotations that Alamy used to specify. They no longer do, but they're still used within the plugin just to make it nice and obvious how things are being separated. It is a photograph. It says there's no people, therefore there's no model release needed, and there's no property, therefore no property release needed. And because it's not on sale yet, it hasn't sold. It does show the individual revenue counts for each photo. So that fetch has gone well. These ones were updated only yesterday, and you can see from the file names that they are fairly unique. At some point fairly soon on this camera they will start to wrap around. So how does it work if it does come across more than one file with the same file name when it's doing these searches? Well, the first thing I need to say is that most of the time it doesn't matter. As long as it's been matched once, then it stays matched, even if you then rename it in Lightroom. The reason for that is that it now has that unique identifier, the Alamy reference. What you can't see from here is that it has a second unique identifier which is hidden. That unique identifier looks like this part of the URL, and basically it's just a longer way of generating a unique ID. I'm not quite sure why they use two, but they do, and they use them in different places. So the plugin stores both for a reference for if you need to change things as well. So say you were to find that this had been matched incorrectly. What you can do very easily in that case is just overtype the Alamy reference with the correct one. Simple as that. The next time it does a fetch, it will recognize that that's changed, it will discard the hidden ID, and it will go and get the correct data for whichever Alamy reference you've typed in. In all other circumstances, it simply relies on these two references the next time it fetches, which means that renames really don't matter. Also, if you do upload another photo with the same file name, then it will recognize that it has a different one, and it will probably, and I say probably with good reason, match the unmatched new image. If it does get them wrong, as I say, you can just manually replace that if you absolutely have to. If it does come back and decide that it has more than one photo which matches the file name, then it does try to narrow things down further by looking at the photo's original date and time, and it will also look at things like captions if the date and time also matches. So if you have uploaded it with captions and certain other bits of data, then they can be used to help matching, but those are only used once it's gone through a lot more certain data. If you have decided to keep a copy of the JPEGs for these, it will also recognize that those have been the uploaded copy. It will add matching data to them, but it recognizes that they're effectively duplicates, and it will use an uploaded copy to help match an unmatched original if it has to. So as I was saying with the original date, if it finds more than one photo during a download which is unmatched and has a matching file name, or it has several photos which could match the file name, depending on whether you've got a copy name or not, it will then look at the upload date of the uploaded copy, and it will look at the pixel size of the uploaded copy, and it will really do its hardest to try and get these things matched. But hopefully, even over the very quick summary I've had here, you can see that it's not as easy as it may seem. However, under most circumstances, as long as you're simply doing an upload, fetching those photos, even when you're doing selected, which is the hardest possible method it has, it does get them first time unless something has really got in the way. So what happens then if you have had an image which has failed QC? What happens if you delete an image at Alamy and then resubmit it? Obviously that has exactly the same details as a previous image. When you re-upload something like that, whether it's deleted or rejected, Alamy assign it with an entirely new Alamy reference. That means that if it's already matched in the plugin, then it's going to be looking for an old photo which is either failed QC or no longer there. Well, the plugin handles that. It does look for those statuses. If something's been rejected, if it's been deleted, then it will effectively ignore any existing Alamy reference and it will consider it eligible for more matching. This is another reason that it can be quite helpful to store these static collections, because if these had failed and I had maybe removed one of them or I'd improved one of them and re-uploaded them all, then I would have my record here saying exactly what was uploaded. So I think that's quite enough detail for now on the fetching. You can see that under almost all circumstances it simply goes there. It identifies it. Once it's identified, it stays identified, and from then on you can exchange information with Alamy in either direction as you like, even if you've renamed the photo. It's just that very first stage which can cause problems, particularly if you're new to the plugin and you have a lot of photos at Alamy which you have maybe renamed since they were uploaded. So, thanks for your attention so far. Well done for paying attention. It's not an easy subject. And if you're interested in the details of how the matching works, please check out that specific video. In the meantime, thanks very much for watching.